Well, hey there, everyone. I'm Scott King, and that is Chris Kraus. And today we're going to talk about orchestration and what does orchestration actually mean. So I did what everybody does now is I went to ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT, what does orchestration mean? And this is what it told me. So I thought this was great, Chris. So orchestration refers to the process of arranging or adapting a piece of music for performance by an orchestra or a large ensemble. This typically involves assigning the various parts of a musical composition to different instruments in order to create a balanced and harmonious sound. Can't say that. The term can also be applied more broadly to describe the process of coordinating and blending various elements in other artistic or organizational contexts. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool, but then it kept going. Like I didn't ask it
something more than artistic orchestration.
Yeah. So what I thought was really cool is it kept going. Maybe it knows who I am and why I was there. But then it just it kept typing, kept generating text. In the context of computer systems and software, orchestration refers to the automated arrangement, coordination, and management of complex computer systems, middleware, and services. This involves controlling the interactions and execution of multiple tasks, often across different platforms or environments, to achieve a desired outcome. And I was like, hey, that is awesome. I love that.
Well, the second definition is a little more dry, but I'm kind of surprised it came up with both contexts or two examples of what orchestration means. That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah. I was surprised that it gave me two different definitions on one prompt.
Yeah.
So then I knew that we were going to talk about a DevOps example today.
Yeah.
So I asked it, what does orchestration mean in DevOps? And I thought it would probably get a little more contextual, but it got a lot more contextual. I'm going to read the definition and then we'll get started. So in the context of DevOps, orchestration refers to the automated management, coordination, and execution of various processes and tasks involved in the development, deployment, and maintenance of software applications. DevOps is a set of practices that aims to bridge the gap. And I hate that it knows bridge the gap. I hate bridge the gap. It's so jargony. But it learned from the internet, and everyone wants to bridge the gap. Okay. Let me get back on track. So bridge the gap between development and operations teams, promoting collaboration and integration in order to streamline software delivery and improve overall quality. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It went on to give some examples, and I'll paste the screenshot in the article. But in terms of, what we're talking about, orchestration, right, Chris? So people may not understand what that means because they're not really seeing the entire outcome or the entire process. Like
right.
if I live too low level, or I'm inside, maybe I do one app, or I'm just the infrastructure guy. Like I don't understand the whole orchestration. So like what does that really mean? Like from a DevOps perspective and a delivery perspective, like is this thing right?
Yeah, and we always have maybe some little bit of a blinder when we think about our step in a bigger process, because when you say DevOps, there's always this implied figure eight, right? There's continuous integration where we do the basics. We're going to worry about how do we compile the code? Do we use source control? Can we build it? Did you break the build? And you do your unit tests. And those things that like developers tend to do, but they're not the entire end-to-end cycle. They're just one part of it. And of course, you know how developers are. They love tools. So there's a lot of development automation tools that help you do that one part of it. But on the other side, when you get to the other parts of, and some people say continuous delivery, deployment, I don't really care which definition you use. We'll just say CD. That's a whole nother set of organization, different skills, different parts of the organization. And the goal is for everybody to actually work together to say, here's a requirement, let's code it. and let's actually get it tested, moved in production, and monitor it. And monitoring is always the hardest part, monitoring production. But yeah, a lot of people, they just think of part of this process because that's the part that their role is used to. So something needs to orchestrate and handshake from one part of the organization to the next part of the organization. So it's difficult for people to think about it from the bigger picture. There's a figure 8 on the wall, but realize there's probably 4 different parts of the organization who have to help define what it is. Let's go code it. So that's all the CD, source control, compile it, unit testing. Someone's got to validate it. Someone's got to do the non-functional testing. And then someone's actually got to do, hey, let's sign off and put this in the customer's hands. So it's a bigger process itself. There's multiple steps. And it doesn't work unless you have all of it. But it's not all in the same tool set. And it's not the same person doing everything.
Yeah, and definitely different than it varies by organization, right? So all the cool DevOps stories are the digital first companies where like the technology isn't as diverse, right?
Well, or or security mandates. Think about hospitals, healthcare. They have to have a lot of sign off that what they're doing is accurate, it's been tested and validated. But if you're just, say, you're on a website and you're digital first and you're going to upsell with some pop-up advertisements, but they work great. If they don't quite work, it doesn't matter. There's no federal problem. There's no governance problem with you didn't render the ad correctly or fast enough, right? Other parts of the organization, you have to validate those steps. So their processes are much heavier and have many more steps to them.
Yeah. So what are the good parts of automation? So, what parts are better automated than others?
Well, if you listen, a lot of people say Facebook, Amazon, they do so many deployments or they builds, and those are, deployment is a big term. It could be the actual beginning of the process. So we've gotten good from the developer standpoint. We have source control, we extract, we compile, we either do the build locally or we do the build in a server to say, we've compiled the code correctly. So that beginning part of the life cycle, we have tools to help us get the requirements and put them into sprints or what have you. We've done a good job of actually divvying out the code. But once we've built it, after that is where it gets a little bit more great. But the front end of continuous integration, we've gotten really good at because we've been doing it for years and there's a lot of tools behind it. It's when you get to the next step of, okay, hey user, or hey user acceptance, or hey security testing, come look at this. And some of those things are very manual oriented, or they're newer. And that's where it gets much harder to actually automate or get orchestration on top of those.
So who's in charge of this? So if those manual steps take longer and it's harder to orchestrate because maybe you're involving people, and then you talked about the different rules, right, from healthcare and security, maybe data governance. Who's in charge of that, and maybe what are they looking into? Are they, and this is hypothesis, right? Are they looking into better automating what works well, or would they look at, hey, this bottleneck or this constraint I need to work on, right? Because it slows the whole system. What do you think?
Well, I think most people look to automate things that don't require human intervention or human feedback. So, because automating things in a script, like here, computer, go do these 7 things, FTP this file, click command line to start the web server, things like that. Things where we don't have humans involved are much easier to automate. The things where we need a human to say, look at it, is this functioning correctly? Have someone do load performance testing on the application itself. Those things, when you ever need humans and human interactions, is much harder. And the catch is a lot of those extra steps, we don't have a very common system of record. Everybody has their own place they work where it's manual or maybe it's automated, but they all have Excel spreadsheets. They have different ways to status on what they've done. So the easiest things are earlier because they're things that we don't need humans in interaction with.
Yeah. Or it's a person, right?
Mhm.
Person that knows how all this works.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
like, uh, what was his name? Was it Brent in the Phoenix Project? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Brent?
Yep.
I think it was Brent. Yeah. He knew how everything works. And, if he left, then that's not good.
No.
Uh, so, like, you said that there's a lot of automation tools. Like, if you
Mhm.
could quantify that, and then like, where do we lose automation? Like, where do we need to orchestrate the next step? So, kind of go back to the orchestra example, right? With the music, you go to an orchestra and you hear the entire piece all at one
Right.
time, but there's different coordinated parts. It would be like one is missing. Like if you heard the orchestra and were no strings, and then they walked in from backstage and were like disruptive and moving their chairs around and getting settled, it would be kind of like that, right? Because you're talking about the
Yeah.
human interaction. Is that the hardest part? Is the human interaction?
I definitely. And so it's because those things may happen at different points in time. And that whenever you have human interaction, they need to then not just do an action, they have to then follow up and notify other people of their results. And, no one likes filling out Excel spreadsheets and emailing them, or they're supposed to upload things into a SharePoint. And then the problem is another person has to go chase everybody around and say, did you do what you're supposed to do? What were the results? So whenever we say putting people as the orchestration, like the person has to go do this manual test. And then if the project manager, in our case, it used to be Heather, she'd come around and it's like, well, have you got all your evidence together? Have you done your tests? Where's the load test? Where's the non-functional test? Where's the security scans, right? Do we have, so we used to have a person called Heather, and she would actually just run around as a project manager and say, have you done all these things, right? That's the hard part because, people are busy. Sometimes they don't get them done. They don't have statuses. It's not real time. There's nothing coordinating and actually gathering the information and then presenting it in a single view.
So that's interesting. You mentioned Excel 3 or 4 times already. I can't
Oh, yeah.
imagine updating an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of this. And what I'm thinking about is like the notifications on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like your phone just tells you something changed.
Right.
You don't have to go look for changes, right? And you're talking about this Excel spreadsheet, like I would have to go look for the change unless it's like the online version with Google Sheets and like you comment and tag a person, then it would notify me, right?
Yeah.
But why wouldn't this DevOps orchestration process just notify me like on my phone? Like, wouldn't that
So
work better? Like, hey, do this.
you could, but that's where orchestration is missing. Like
Yeah.
we're not very good at giving in the middle of a process. So, kicking off something and waiting for a result that's a process is easy. But then you say, okay, I need to actually say start functional testing. Well, that may mean we have manual testers offshore. They've got quality center. They've got hundreds of manual tests and they start banging through them. But then someone has to do, okay, while they're doing that, we need user acceptance where someone from business says, this does what it's supposed to do. I agree with that while we're doing our regression testing. And in parallel, we want someone to do the load testing. So when we start getting, so in the second half, very parallel of multiple people getting their jobs done, and then we make a final go and no go decision, we're really orchestrating people. There's nothing that people have gotten good at. I mean, there's going to be, you can always find a niche tool that will track this, but in reality, no one's gotten good or very seamless in this. How do we include people to say, I've signed off, the new functionality does what I expect it to do. Functional people have tested and regressed and said, we haven't broken anything unexpectedly. The security scans, they say, we've done the vulnerability testing. We don't see any open ports. We don't see any problems. There's no cross-site scripting and all that nonsense. And so it's really, those people are not linear. We tend to ask people to do those things in parallel. So that's what makes it harder to track. So you want to lay an orchestration tool on top of that, because it's fine they use Quality Center. It's fine that they get their reports in a load testing product. It's fine they activate service virtualization to simulate things so they can do functional testing with very particular data. But someone needs to help orchestrate and realize a lot of that is going to happen in parallel. Because at the end, it's, did everybody check in? Did everybody give their feedback and their thumbs up and thumbs down? And then you go to the next step, which is, oh, hey, customer success. We're happy with this build. We think it's something the customers need right away. Please coordinate with the customer to take this upgrade, because it may need a little downtime, or it may mean that there's new functionality the customer needs to know about, so they're not surprised when it shows up, right? So there's always, multiple steps involved. So just because we compiled it, CI, just because we say it's ready, like we have a customer and their biggest problem is we have a new version of software. I have to go ask 500 customers and notify them, hey, we're going to do an upgrade of these 10 data centers and these 50 on-point deployments, right? We have to notify them. It has nothing to do with the development. It's actually the whole, okay, let's go put this in your environment so you can start using it. That's the next challenge, right? Which involves steps like coordinating when do they want to take the upgrade, making sure they're trained on the upgrade and they know there's a change in the screens or there's a change in how you do something. So there's a whole next step that keeps coming. So we're not even done when we say the software is done. We now have to figure out how to tell the users, we're going to go upgrade your environment. Because, every time I even upgrade like Office or Outlook on my computer, I'm like, please don't break anything I need. We have to communicate better. One thing we can do with orchestration is do a better job of communicating so that everybody expects what to happen. And then there's a whole nother checklist to actually deploy to a production and deployment, right? That we need to automate.
Yeah, I didn't really take the customer success angle, right? That's interesting because that's the outcome, is it to get the software.
The outcome is to get a new feature in the hand of a user, right?
Yeah, I was thinking more like Facebook and Amazon. It just changes and I'm forced to deal with it, right?
You're surprised.
But if you have your internal processes in a row and then you have to involve the customer, and the customer has to check off like their UAT, and they have day jobs, right? So that would be very, very difficult.
So there's more steps because it's not orchestrated or the outcome is not completed until the customer has the feature, they're using it, getting value. That's our nirvana, right? So all the steps to get there.
Wow. Okay. So if, let's take Heather, for example. If you were talking to Heather and she was having a tough time orchestrating all these, the people and the processes and everything. Can you sum it up for us? Like what should Heather do? Like if she's in charge of all this, like what does she need to do?
Right. So she has tribal knowledge of the process, but also the key roles of who to notify and get feedback from. So when she puts that process in automation software, and then the automation software runs 10 instances of that process for her, and it's responsible for doing the checking up, she's then changing the way she's working. Instead of her working on, let me do all these tasks and bug people, she's actually working on exceptions. Like, I've given someone 4 hours to do this and it worked, I don't worry about it. If I give them 4 hours and I get notified an exception has happened, they're not done with security scans in 4 hours, then she actually gets to do the important work of, finding out why do we have a delay in security scanning. So her job is really to take the steps of the process, the associated roles, put it in automation software, and then let it do all the nonsense work. And she then manage the exceptions. So she should be looking at only things that she needs to, in terms, we call it expediting in Agile terms. Like, she's only worrying with expediting things that are broken or behind schedule. So she's not the taskmaster. She's not doing, bugging people on that. She's actually becoming the expediter for what's gone wrong.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Hope it makes sense to everybody else. Just work on the exceptions. But you have to build this orchestration, right,
Mhm.
for it to take care of all those automation steps.
Right. And
Um,
it'll change every time, right? You'll
yeah,
never
it
build it
will.
once and never change it. There will be some change where she's going to update her automation. They swap tools in the background, but that shouldn't affect your process. But maybe there's a new bit of process you have to cover. She's going to upgrade that and change that. It can't just be static, one and done, and walk away.
All right. So Heather, if you're out there, give us a call.
Yeah.
We'll help you. But I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for talking about orchestration and love the DevOps example.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Until next time.